Wayne L. Cornelius. W-A-Y-N-E-L-I. Hold it. Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E-L-O-U-S-E. C-O-R-N-E-L-I-U-S.
Okay, where was the location you were born?
Oneida, Wisconsin.
Were you born at home or were you born?
I really don't know if I was born at home or in a hospital. I don't have no record on the hospital, but I got a birth certificate. It doesn't say where.
Where the location?
No.
Okay. All right. Give us the name of your mother and father.
My mother, Frances Mabel Sickles. It's her maiden name. My father was Charles S. Cornelius.
What did the S stand for? Do you remember?
Solomon. There was the reason why they called him, well, at that time they called it Little Charles, and there was two Charles, Big Charles and Little Charles, and my dad was Little Charles. So,
Was he smaller than the Big Charles?
yes, he was little.
Okay, you remember the names of your grandparents?
My mother's side was Sickles, but I don't remember his name. And my grandma was Elsie. But then she came back to Oneida here and married Chancey Adams.
That was on your mother's side?
That was on my mother's side.
Okay.
My father's side was Marion Cornelius. What her maiden name was, I don't know. I think my grandfather was Solomon
Solomon Cornelius.
Cornelius.
Okay. Did you have the opportunity to spend any time with your grandparents on either side?
My grandma and my dad's side, I spent time with her when I was young. And my mother's side, my grandma and Chancey Adams. I spent time with them.
Okay. Let's start with your mother's side. Tell me about your grandparents, what you can remember. Did they ever talk about their education or the kind of work that they did?
Well, my grandma said that her husband came from Buffalo, New York. That's where she was. I don't know if she was born in Buffalo or if she was born here and went to New York after, but he got killed in some kind of a railroad car, or he was a conductor or something on one of these streetcars, and then she came back here to Oneida again. As far as Chancey, he had a little farm here out on Double E in Oneida, and he run the farm, and he was also a painter. So he did a lot of painting for people in Freedom and around the community, house painting. And he had that little farm for quite a few years, and then I don't know, he got sickly and had to sell it. So they just had the house left and the barn, and some of the land that he had sold off shortly after he got sick there. But then he quit farming.
Did they ever talk about their education? They went away to school or they went to school around here?
Well, my grandma went out east to school, some of the Indian schools, and I don't think Chancey, they sent him into school. I think he just maybe local or something. I don't know too much about his background.
Did they speak Oneida?
Oh yeah, they both spoke Oneida real good. They
What about your mother? Or your grandmother? What kind of work did she do, or did she just work homework there?
She was just a housewife, and she did a lot of sewing, and I can't remember what kind of sewing she did, because the only thing I could remember was that she showed me one time was a big bolt of goods that they got from the government, and they used to have to make their clothes out of that. That was in the attic at that time when she showed us. And she did other things, make cornbread, and I think a lot of people came to buy cornbread from her.
Were either one of them involved in any kind of tribal activities that you know of?
Well, I think it was more like it wasn't a real big tribal program. It was just like local, and they kind of had meetings off and on, but what they discussed, I don't know.
Okay. Now let's talk about your grandparents on your. That'd be on your father's side, then, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Where were they located, and what did they do?
Well, my grandpa and grandma, they grew up around Chicago Corners. And I don't know if he had the store there, like a little trading post in Chicago Corners, or I know he had a farm. And my grandma stayed with us after he died, but then she went back by her other daughter later years.
Now, do you know anything about their backgrounds in terms of education or kind of?
I don't think they had much education. They had, at that time, it was just maybe self-education that they had, you know, it wasn't, because they couldn't talk English too good.
Did you spend a great deal of time, and about how old were you when you were spending time with your grandparents?
Well, my dad's side, I spent a lot of time with them. She's lived with us for about 2 years, and then she moved back home to her, or not home, but to one of her daughters, and then I didn't spend no more time with them till after she passed away.
About how old were you when she spent those 2 years with you?
Oh, I was in 3, 4 years old, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Maybe a little older. And my grandfather, I never spent no time with him.
He was the one that had the store at the beginning, though, right?
I think that's the one that had the store and had a little, well, it wasn't a little trading post, that's all he had. And
Is that where Moss's is now?
I think that was down in Moss's, and he had a little farm somewhere back in there.
Okay. All right, let's talk about your dad. Tell me what you remember about your dad. His education, his occupation.
He was in World War One, and he got wounded in World War One. I don't know where, but he didn't have much education either. They didn't send him to no schooling at that time. But after he got out of the war and he married my mother, we had the farm, which was Rita Webster's old home. They tore it down now. But the farm, we had until I was 7 years old.
Do you know how big the farm was? Do you remember acreage?
Well, at one time, I mean, you did everything by hand. We had the whole, must have been 40 acres back in there. but we had 10 cows, and I think it was 4 pigs or 6 pigs and a horse.
That's a lot of livestock
Yeah, at that
for
time.
those days,
I mean, it
sure.
was,
sure.
We're gonna start.
But what year was that? Are we talking about?
in 1939, 40.
Now, and your dad, when he came home from the war, he was working a farm then?
Well, I don't know what he did. He did a lot of work before he got to the farm. He was, well, they moved all over. They lived in Manitowoc because he was worked with a quarry crew, and he was a blaster on the quarry crew. So that's where they had to move, was Manitowoc, someplace out there. And Whitelaw, or as my mother said, was the town. They had a big quarry there. Then he worked across this road in the WPA days, right across the street from us, in the big quarry there. And then there was another quarry, I forgot where that was. But most of the work he did was in the quarries.
Right. Now, you say he was in World War One. Do you know where he? What did he serve with? The Army, the Navy, or
I think he was in the Army.
Army?
Hmm.
You don't know what are the areas he served though.
No.
Oh,
No.
okay. But he survived World War One and then came back and working in the quarry,
Hmm.
and then he had the farm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So they had a kind of a split up there after in 40. Yeah, I think it was in the 40s somewhere. But then he passed away in 1944.
All right. Let's talk about your mom. Did you know what kind of education she might have had?
Well, she went to a lot of Indian schools. They sent her to Carlisle, out to Toma, up to Kashina, somewhere back in there. There was another place there. Out east to school. I can't remember the name of that she mentioned. But there was, I don't know how far in school they went them days.
Hmm.
I know they try to educate them. I mean, but
Now, when she came back from school, did she go to work, or did they get married? Your mom and dad get married right away, or do you remember?
no, she, I think she was here a couple times. They went back to, in fact, she was born, I think, in Buffalo, New York. And when they came to Oneida with my grandma, I don't know how old she was then, but that's when she came back here. And what she did from that time, I mean, they sent her all to these schools, and when she got out of that school, she must have been a teenager, young, older. I met my dad somewhere along the line there.
Okay, how many brothers and sisters did your mother have?
Well, it would have been 11 of us living. But
Your mother's had a. No, your mother, did she have any brothers and sisters?
oh, no.
Oh.
She had a half-sister, and then Virgie Polis was living down the road from my grandma's, off in Lambie Road now. What it was named at that time, I don't know. But her parents and her sisters and brothers, they all passed away from bad water. So Virgie moved in with my grandma, and my grandma and my mother took care of Virgie till Virgie grew up.
Mhm.
So,
What about on your dad's side? Did he have any brothers and sisters?
oh yeah, he had.
Do you remember their names?
Well, there was Eastman, Chester. Let's see, what else was there? Eastman, Chester, and gosh, I can't remember all the names. There was a bunch of them.
Large
They lived
family.
all around Chicago Corners.
Oh.
So
Okay.
that's where their family was raised. And he had some sisters. So I don't know what. By the time I got to be a teenager, they were all already scattered around the country.
Grown up, huh?
Wayne Cornelius was one of his brothers. He had a big family. They were all out in Washington. Some went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think some of the kids went to Nebraska or someplace. But they were scattered all over.
Scattered all over.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, your mother and dad got married. How many children did they have? Besides yourself?
Well, living, they had 11.
Yeah.
There would have been 15 altogether.
15?
Yeah.
Well, that's a big family.
Yeah.
Uh,
They had,
can you give us their names?
well, the living ones, I can't remember all the ones that had passed away, but there was a Harriet, Harold, Harrison, Merlin, Evangeline, Roberta, Irene, Charlene, myself, Judy, and Ronnie.
Well, that was a big family to feed.
Oh yeah,
Where did you come in the age group?
third from the youngest.
Third from the youngest. So you had a lot of help there when you were growing up from your older brothers and sisters, then, huh?
Well, not really. I mean, the girls, my sister, she got married and I think she was 18, Harriet. So she left home, and then Harold and they went to the CC camp, Harold and Harrison. And then the war broke out, so Harold, Harrison, and Merlin all left for the war. And then my other sisters, Evangeline and Roberta, they were kind of nannies, like to helping some of the relation with their kids. So they stayed with different families. One lived in Port Washington, and the other one lived in Appleton. But really, I mean, we just had a younger bunch to take care of.
I see. Now, did your mother and dad, they both speak Oneida?
Yeah, they both talked Oneida, but they never talked around us too much.
Do you have any theory as to why they may not have, spoke Oneida when they were around the children?
Well, when they went to school, my mother said our own Indian people did this to them. They got paid from the government schools, and they were told not to let these kids talk Indian. But they would still sneak around and talk Indian to each other. And then as my mother got out of school and older, it was kind of a no-no to teach her kids Indian. And the same with my father. They were told not to teach the children Indian language, and I think that's how he lost it.
Now, when you were growing up, what kind of transportation did your dad have at the time?
Well, we had a horse and wagon. later years, we had an old car. I can't remember what it was. It was an old Model A or Model T. I can't remember. And then that was about it. Or for transportation, we went to Oneida on horse and wagon.
What about, did you have running water and electricity?
No, the only running water, you went to run to the pump and back.
What were you, tell me what a day in your life would be as far as responsibilities and chores at home when you were small.
And chores?
Yeah.
Oh, everything, it was our responsibility. I mean, us younger kids took care of the farm. My dad worked out, and my mother, she had trouble seeing. She had cataracts over her eyes, and then them days they sent you off to Toma, Wisconsin. So you'd be gone, she'd be gone like 2-3 weeks at a time. They'd do one eye and then send her home, and a couple months later or so they'd do the other eye, and by that time it was growing back again. So us kids, we took care of the farm, most of the younger ones. My younger one brother, Merlin, he was kind of the head honcho of the farm until he went to the war. Then Evangeline, my other sister, she kind of took over, and we could just couldn't handle the farm no more. So my mother sold the cows, and we got rid of the, oh gosh, I don't know. We didn't have no more, cows, horse, we got rid of that. Well, we had a lot of chickens. She used to raise like 100 chickens at a time, sometime more. I could remember going to the pier, and we'd kill them chickens after she got them in the spring. We'd raise them, and then they'd fall, we'd kill them and haul them to the pier and sell them. Eggs, we sold a lot of eggs, and we had strawberries we used to have to take care of. So there was a lot of chores. I mean, it kept us busy all summer. We didn't have time to monkey around. And 1944, when my dad died, then they sold the farm. So we moved around like gypsies after that. We went from one place to the next. Most of the time it was in local houses. And 1949, I think we moved to Black Creek. At the Bischoffs had a big farm out there. We went over there. We lived out there until 1952, early 53, and we came back to Oneida.
When you lived on the farm, what school did you go to?
Well, we went to 2 different schools, and when I lived on the farm, we used to go to Chicago Corners school, and then we went to Silver Summit School, which is up on E, on the corner there, Fish Creek. Then when we moved off there, we went back to Chicago Corners, I guess it was, school.
Did your parents go to attend one of the churches, or
Well, my mother was Methodist.
Methodist?
Yeah, and she attended church quite a bit. But that's where you got a lot of your clothing and stuff. They kind of send rummages to churches, and your kids got rummaged clothes, but it was in good shape.
What was a normal Christmas like at home?
Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have much of a Christmas. I don't know, really, if we had a Christmas tree. Oh, and on the farm we had a good Christmas. But after that, I mean, their Christmases kind of went downhill. It was like a Christmas tree, and then some of the churches we went to, most of the time we never had enough money to buy a real fancy Christmas, so we go to church, we get a pair of gloves and a bag of candy and maybe some other kind of a little toy or something. And that was about it for for Christmas.
What about other holidays? Let's say, did you celebrate Hoyan?
Oh, we used to celebrate Hoyan a lot.
Tell me about that.
Well,
It's like somebody that didn't know what Hoyan was. What did that mean to you guys at the time?
Hoyan, we knew what it meant, but a lot of people were moving into the community, and there were white people moving in. So the first year, they didn't know what Hoyan was. They thought we'd come to the door begging. But I guess after a while, they found out what it was about. So it was mostly walking. You walked from your house maybe a mile or two, wherever you could go, when you were kids. I could remember coming home, whatever they give you, mostly apples and cookies and donuts, but your apple would be froze and your cookies would be stiffer than a board. But we made it, it was, I think we educated some of the people, the white people that moved into the community, what Hoyan was. It was kind of a funny thing because there was can't remember that fellow. Well, we went to the door and we knocked and hollered Hoyan, and he come to the door and he says, "Yeah, go on." He told us to get up. So, that was just one incident we had in our Hoyaning days.
What about any other holidays? Do you remember any other holidays you celebrated when you were young?
Well, we celebrated Thanksgiving, and there wasn't much going on usually. Everything was so scattered around on the 4th of July that you just got a fireworks here and there, and you didn't go nowhere. We didn't have the transportation. Most of the time we stayed home for holidays. The only main holidays we had was like Thanksgiving and Christmas. All the rest we pretty well celebrated at home.
Okay, after you moved around to different schools, did you stay at one place to go to high school?
Well, came from Black Creek or Shiocton up in that area, and I started Highview School here in Oneida. I graduated out of Highview and I went to Green Bay. They transported us on a bus system, and it was a good thing to me. I went to school that 1 year, and then there was a lot of prejudice yet in Green Bay. So the kids would kind of, if you weren't really dressed to their standards, or so whatever, they kind of made fun of you. So I quit, and my freshman year or second year, I was supposed to go back to East High, and I never went to East High.
Well, what year was that?
Was in 50s, 50, 55, 56. No, it wasn't 53. Because then I quit and I signed up for the service. I went to service
How old were you then?
17
17? Where'd you go?
to the Army.
And where did they send you?
Well, first of all, I signed up for airborne, and I got out of that, and they kind of had a choice of going to Germany, Korea, or to Panama. We didn't know which group it was, but they sent us to Panama. So,
What was it? What was that experience like?
pardon?
What was Panama like at the time?
Well, at that time, it was all jungle training, and I think they knew about the Vietnam War. Towards the end of my service years, they knew about the Vietnam War kind of coming up. 'Cause they wanted me to re-enlist, take another 6 years.
Okay, how many years did you enlist for?
3.
3, okay. And you served most of your time down in Panama?
Yeah, I was almost all of it down in Panama. But they wanted me to go back in and go into training for 6 more years there. Because they're sending special forces over to Vietnam at that time already. But I got out and came back to Oneida.
Well, when you were in there, were you in the infantry or were you in training for other?
Oh, they call it infantry. It was heavy weapons. We had machine gun, our mortars, and wasn't no rifles. Well, we had a rifle, but I mean we had this heavier weapons.
And what was your job primarily?
Well, I was a gunner on a mortar and a machine gunner. Then they made me worked my way up to sergeant. And then I just had a whole crew to work with. And
You did the training then?
yeah, I trained these guys and marched them around like
Well,
good little soldiers.
You know, you hear stories about Panama. Was it a lot of jungle, or would they keep you pretty much in the, like in a city area?
Oh no, military bases were all fenced off, and it was like a big compound. It was right near the canal. Panama Canal was our major job was to protect the canal. But they had, we had training in artillery and all of this stuff. And most of the time we spent like 3 months in the jungles. And that was, they called it the dry season, but it was never stopped raining there.
The dry season,
Yeah.
always raining, eh?
Yeah. So I'd spend like 3 months out in the jungle. We'd go out in December sometimes and come back March, sometimes in April.
Did you see a relationship between the local people and the Americans and the GIs? Was there a difference of, or was it a strained, or was it a good relationship at the time? Or
In Panama, it was it was a good. I think it was a good relation with the local people. But how the governments, got along, I don't know. I know the United States at that time, they said they were paying like $50 million a year for the use of the canal, and the American government took care of the whole canal. And where they went with the money from there, I don't know.
It's just that I heard stories that the people that lived, the Americans that lived in and around the canal were kind of like a group of people unto themselves, separate from the local people.
Well, that they did.
Yeah.
They fenced it in. But we never, knew too much about the local people. As far as local people, I mean, downtown you could go and you have no problem at all. And a lot of friendly people that we met. So there was quite a few American families that were living off post, they called it. And where they sent them to live off post, they had nice little areas, and Panamanian, they had maids and they had people that took care of their lawn and everything. So it wasn't really that bad that they would get shot every time they went off the post or anything. Just
3 minutes, Gordon.
separated them.
Okay. They were asking you to ship over for a few more years, you say?
Well, they wanted me to sign up for another 6 years. And I almost did. I came home and I had a hard time finding work here at that time. And I went to Green Bay, different places, and I thought, well, there was no money for schooling. I tried to go back to school, and tribe didn't have no money. So I went from one place to the next, and I thought, well, maybe I better go back in the service. At least you get paid once a month. So during this time, I was looking for a job. I got different jobs here in Green Bay, and then I got a job with the paper mill. Well, I didn't get to go to work right away at the paper mill. I went around looking about it. Got out in 54, or 57, and September of 57, I got a job at the paper mill, Procter & Gamble. Well, it wasn't Procter & Gamble at that time. It was Hoberg paper. And then in the late 57, Procter & Gamble bought it. So then it changed names to Procter & Gamble, and I was there since that time, till I retired.
How many years was that?
Oh, 1957, stayed there until after 92. Worked in, there wasn't, when I first got hired, there wasn't too many Indians working there. There was like 4 of us, 4 Indians at that time.
So who were the 4 Indians?
Well, it was Bob Green, Donnie Denny, Dewey Denny, and oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the other fellow. And myself, then after that I was hired. There was about 4 Indians there before I got hired.
So you spent quite a few years there.
Yep. Well,
What was your primary duties at the mill?
well, I started out in a wood yard, they call it. So we used to, got the job with stacking these logs that come in on a boat. They take them off the boat and then haul them over and stack them up in the big piles. You don't see that no more. I don't know if you probably remember the big piles of wood that was around there. That's what we did. And then from there, I went into they went into a new building, and I run a chipper for a while. And they used to pull these logs in, and it'd go through a debarker, run down from the debarker to another place there. They went around and into the chipper. And that's where they stored all the chips and made the wood from after they cooked them. From there, it was about not about 6 months I worked in there. Then they come and they got me and they put me on a paper machine. And I was on a paper machine since. I worked in different departments doing it when the machines were down or something. But in a converting and they were into tissue machine. We made run puffs area. Sometimes they had to rebuild a machine, so it'd be down like 3 months. So they send you to different departments.
All right, during all this time, you were involved outside of the mill.
Pardon?
You were doing things outside of the mill too, weren't you?
Oh,
Besides working at the mill?
I worked 2 jobs. I used to work at the boats, and in the morning, you get done work and you'd run over and get on the boats for lights. We'd load, send all that stuff to Europe. Then from there we went to, I helped the guy landscape part-time. But it was little things I did off and on for extra money.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get much money when we first started there. I think I got $1 and I was 97 cents when I started at the mill. Then I went to $1 and some cents, and then I went to $1.40 some cents after. Then I got on the paper machines at $1.73.
When did you start your family?
Pardon?
When did you start a family?
Well, I got married in 1958. In
And
September.
who did you marry?
Cleo Schuyler. We got. In fact, I met her in 57, and a year later, in 58, we got married, and we had the 1 kid, and then after that we had another one. Well, we have 4 kids, and then we didn't have none for 5 years. And she said, well, maybe we'll have another one. I don't know, we can afford another one, but we had 2 more boys after that. But they were 5 years apart from the first 4.
Why don't you give us the names of all the children?
Well, I had Carlos as the oldest, Wayne Jr., Amy, and Lynn, and Jody. And there was a long span there. There was Joey and Christopher.
Out of all of those, how many grandchildren did you come up with?
Well, we got 15 grandchildren right now, and 6 or 7 great-grandchildren.
Wow, that's a big family when you get together, huh?
Yeah, it isn't really that big. I mean,
Well,
I'm used to all of that.
That's a big table to sit.
Yeah.
What other activities were you involved in? Do you ever go any sports?
Oh, I used to play baseball when I got out of service. I played baseball for the service for a while. And then after I got out, I kind of played here in Oneida, but then we were running 24/7 at the mill. And in fact, I was running a 7-day schedule, so I didn't get to play very much. And I finally just dropped away from playing baseball all the time. It was played on Sundays, and that was about the only sport I played in. I went for basketball when I was in high school and football, but all that time they never had a way home, so I had to walk. And I walked from Green Bay to Oneida after football practice. And I had about 3 or 4 times of that, and that was enough. It was getting cold. And basketball was worse yet. I went to 3 games in basketball, and the first 2 games, this kid's mother picked us up. And she said, well, I can give you a ride home, Miss Brown.
I think our next one is out.
Did you stop your clock?
Yeah. It's all right. Anytime. Anytime.
Yeah, you were telling us about going to basketball?
I was playing basketball in high school. Then you had after the game, you didn't have no bus or nothing, so you had to walk home. We got to ride the first 2 games, and 3rd game I walked home, and it was in November, I think. So that was the end of that. I didn't walk no more.
Have you had a chance to work or serve on any organizations or committees or commissions for the tribe
Well,
over the years?
yeah, I did on the land committee. I was on land committee when it started, and that too, it started out pretty good because I could make a lot of meetings in between my shift work, and it was only scheduled like on Saturday or certain days where my shift, wasn't working, and we went to 2 days a week. And then after that, it started getting more and more. Pretty soon it became a full-time job almost. So I quit. I should have stayed on there, but I didn't, there wasn't no money involved or anything at that time when I first started. Now they had a whole, committee of it now. I don't know what they do. I got out of the land committee and stayed at my job.
You don't raise any chickens though, huh?
Pardon?
You don't raise any chickens like your mother did?
No, and I did have some turkeys. I've had some wild turkeys, in fact. That was 1986. I had 4 big wild turkeys and 2 tame turkeys. But then 88, the house burned down, so I gave my nephew the wild turkeys, and they got away from him. In fact, Ronnie, your brother, I had this big old Tom, he got away from me, and he flew right up by Ronnie's house. So he stayed there in a tree for a day and a half before I could get him down. Then I lost it.
What other sports are? You said you made a lot of trips. Is that before or after you retired?
Oh, that was doing my job. I'd get vacation, and eventually it started out with like 1 week, and then you'd work your way up to 3 weeks vacation. Then I got 4 weeks vacation. But you could kind of break it up. I just took the family and load them up on a camper, and away we'd go. Went to Yellowstone, Canada, out into Arizona, all through there. Kids did a lot of traveling when they were little. I don't know if they remember. We went to Niagara Falls, New York. Went up to the Indian reservation up there, Oneida. It was a good life. I mean, after the kids were little yet, but then when they got older, wanted to do their own thing, so kind of broke up then.
What have you been involved in anything since your retirement from the mill?
No.
Did you go back to work at all and doing anything else?
Well, I went 1 week to bingo. I thought maybe I would do something, you know, and I worked that 1 week at bingo. And that was enough. So it was more of a hassle than anything. I didn't do nothing else after that. I quit and we just kind of traveled around and
Okay.
went on vacations.
Now, earlier we were talking about there was an article that came out in Time magazine, and it had to do with the Indian casinos. Why don't you tell me what you observed in there and what your feeling is about that and its effect on the reservations, or what you see has happened?
Well, I think that casinos, they would have helped a lot of the reservation property if they used the money right. But what I was looking at and what I read on the way its operation is, I don't know. I mean, we're still a lot of Indians out west that are property. But then when I talked to people, they said, well, they'll stop and they'll drink it up anyway. So, but what's the difference? I mean, at least you're paying them something from the profits. We traveled to Miami, out of Kansas. There's a little place there. That wasn't big enough to hold 50 people for bingo. And most of them was all bingo halls. Then we went to Oklahoma, and way up onto the Utah border there. There was another place. We went down to see about this big bingo hall they had in Oklahoma, but they only played like on weekends.
I gotta check his mic, but we're getting it.
Well, we went to see this other one Indian tribe there, and then there was some places they were talking about having bingo, and other places they didn't want it. The Navajos didn't want it. And we went through the reservation and Navajo reservation, and we stopped different places, and they said, oh, and we don't want it, we can't even drill a well down here. They loaded up their trucks, they went milk cans and everything, and they went down somewhere to get water. I don't know where they went, I didn't follow them. But they'd come back, and I was talking to this one woman that she had a little shop there, and she says, well, we can't drill a well here, because if we do too many wells, we'll run the farmers up there dry. So they had to haul their water from this one big pumping station line. When we crossed over, we went to Nevada, Las Vegas, and the guy was telling me, he said, I heard they're going to have Indian casino. And I don't know who told him, but this was a white fellow at that time. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, they're allowing us to have bingo. He said, well, they will have gaming pretty quick. But then we broke off talking to him, and we went on to New Mexico, Albuquerque, and we went down to see my brother in Alamogordo, and there was nothing in between there as gaming or casinos or bingo or anything else. We made our rounds and came back home, and then the next year we went to Michigan, and they had a bingo hall at Grand Marais. and it was maybe 100 people that could play there. But they didn't have enough people to play. He said, well, maybe at 5 o'clock, he said, if we get 50 people, he said, we can play bingo. We waited around, and then, because we had a hotel anyway, so 50 people didn't show up, so we left. And we went back down along the coast there of Michigan. And there was supposed to be another bingo hall there, and that wasn't open. So we came back up, we crossed over, we went along what's that, 28, Highway 28,
Oh,
crossed on that one. There's nothing in there. We come to another place, and there was a casino of some kind in there, but it was closed. We crossed from there. We went to Christmas Island, Christmas little town, and they had a bingo hall there. And on down the line, and we got back to 41. We came back home. A year later, we made the same trip, and out of all the places that we stopped, there were 5 different places that had a great big casino, hotel, and restaurants and everything, bingo hall. So I wondered to myself, I told Clay, I said, I wonder where these people get this money, because they were sitting in a property before. And we went down to Mackinac Island. And I don't like to mention names or anything, but we used to stay there a lot in Mackinac Island because that's a vacation. And I pulled into the first hotel because I knew there was no more hotels in that, about 3 at that time. I asked the guy, he said, you got a room? He said, oh yeah. He said, we got a lot of rooms now. He said, I said, well, how come you got so many rooms? He said, ain't anybody coming up here anymore? Oh, he said, we got a lot of people here, he said, but they laundered out their money, he said, from Detroit. And I said, into what? He says, well, there's a whole mess of hotels all along the lake. And we went to look, and sure enough, they were back to back. So, and big hotels.
you follow the casino, huh?
Hmm?
You're following the casinos?
Yeah, well, across the bridge, then there was a big casino in there.
That's made a big impact.
Yeah. But the Indian, I mean, I never seen any of them get their pockets money falling out or anything else, you know. I just seen maybe new homes here and there, but some of them were sort of really go off the road, and you could see how the Indian homes were yet.
Yeah.
Well,
you feel that any area that I neglected to cover that you wanted to share with us?
well, not really. I mean, I lived here all my life, that's all, and things have changed, you know, but I still can't understand is why some people can't get the equality of home and as the others, you know. They and such a high rent. Some of them paid outrageous rent, and eventually they can't afford that. I know a lot of people that had to leave their home or go to rent downtown because they said it was cheaper.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in this morning and sharing this with us, and we appreciate it very much. And we're
Well, there's a lot of
glad you could come, and
other things that run around at night. I hear years back. I mean, like when I was a kid, a lot of places I gone. I had the business in Oneida for a while. The drive-in, I run that for 5 years. sold ice cream, sold a lot of it.
Okay. Well, I know you said you had to run, and